This is Pastor Curry, pastor of the East Zion Fair Baptist Church, Wilmington's most exciting church, the church that love ya, and ain't a thing you can do about it. I know you're wondering what's going on. Why is he not sitting in his chair? Well, we're going to do something a little bit different with this show, and I really hope that you will call someone and tell them that Coffee with Curry is on, because we have an amazing show for you today. Our Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester was with us during this time of Zoom, and she really did a phenomenal job with sharing with us the various things that are going on in Washington as well as here in Delaware. And she showed us, as a woman of God, what she could do when she's under pressure. She showed us the value and the art of prayer. So I want you to call someone, tell them Coffee with Curry is on, and let's get after it.
For Black women, the story of voting rights is a long one. Very early on, at the dawn of the 19th century, they are already at work on a political philosophy that decries racism and sexism in American politics. But constitutionally speaking, it begins with the 15th Amendment, because Black women also need race to be an impermissible criteria if they're to get to the polls. Sojourner Truth is a name people might know, the former slave, anti-slavery activist, and women's rights activist. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, poet, anti-slavery lecturer.
We also have figures like Nannie Helen Burroughs. Ida B. Wells was another major activist that people don't necessarily associate with the suffrage movement, but she absolutely was.
Black women never find a very comfortable home in women's suffrage associations. Racism is always present, sometimes in very pronounced ways.
We have pictures of parades, marches, women dressed up in sort of late 19th, early 20th century Victorian gear, hats, large hats, carrying signs about votes for women. And most of these images are of white women.
The key figures are a remarkable duo of women, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, and those two women will take us to the 19th Amendment. In August of 1920, the state of Tennessee will, by a mere one vote, ratify the 19th Amendment, an amendment that prohibits the states from using sex as a criteria for voting, and it will become part of the Constitution, and American women win the right to vote.
So for white women, it was the end of a long fight, but for many Black women, it was just the beginning of an uphill battle to exercise those rights.
African American women are aware, but really everyone is aware, that nothing in the 19th Amendment is going to prohibit individual states from continuing to disenfranchise Black voters.
And so the first election that they had after the bill passed, the white women were going to vote, and we dressed up and went to vote. And when we got down there, well, we couldn't vote. They gave us all different kind of excuses why. And we just stayed. We asked, we wanted to know why we couldn't vote. And the answers to the questions were so invalid, we were not satisfied. So finally one woman, Mrs. Simmons, said, "Are you saying that we can't vote because we are Negroes?" And he said, "Yes, Negroes don't vote in primary in Texas." So that just hurt our hearts real bad.
And so the 19th Amendment, even as we mark this anniversary, it leaves many, many American women to continue the struggle for political rights, including the vote. And African American women are one chapter or one facet of that story. There's nothing in the 19th Amendment that guarantees Chinese immigrant women the vote. There's nothing in the 19th Amendment that guarantees to Native American women the vote. Latinx women, particularly Mexican American women, also occupy an ambiguous place in the story of voting rights. For Black women, the right to vote is symbolic, and that's not to diminish symbolism. It's to say that the right to vote is a sign that they are full and equal citizens of the United States. African American women are facing the challenges of racial violence, lynching and access to the polls. African American women are looking at a range of inequalities, economic inequalities, housing inequalities, health inequalities, educational inequalities. And access to the ballot is a lever in those struggles. It is the gateway to sitting on juries. It is the gateway to office holding. Black women have an agenda, and it is an ambitious one, and one that they hope the vote will help them further.
It wasn't easy to try to get people to come out to go and try to register to vote, because the first time that we went, we had a circle around the courthouse of pickup trucks and rifles and white people getting ready to stop us. Only 4 people got in that whole day.
What did the white people have to fear from so many blacks registering?
If they became a registered voter, many of the blacks would seek positions in the political field. They would be out. They would fight for justice if they were registered voters. They would turn the city completely around. And that is the reason why they did not want to see black people become registered voters.
What black women want in the wake of the 19th Amendment is federal legislation that will now protect their voting rights, to impose on those states with a history of disenfranchising black voters an extra requirement. And black women will wage a campaign that will take them all the way to 1965 and passage of the Voting Rights Act in that year. It's important to say that winning the Voting Rights Act is a brutal, brutal campaign. Black Americans, women and men, put their lives on the line in too many southern jurisdictions in order to force the hand of Congress, to force the hand of Lyndon Johnson to win voting rights legislation. This is not an easy road for African American women. It is a harrowing road, but it is indeed a victory, one that black women had been looking for nearly half a century.
I know that my grandmother raised my mother that they always had to vote. Like, it was something that she was born in.
My grandmother, Susie Jones, her portrait hangs on the wall, and I am very accountable to her, even as she passed many years ago. People ask me, why do we need to know this history? Today, we live in an era of voter suppression, laws that are neutral on their face, voter ID requirements, or the purging of voter rolls, or the shuttering of polling places, none of which announce that they are aimed at keeping voters of color, women of color from the polls. But when we look at those laws in practice, we can recognize that, like in 1920, in 2020, seemingly neutral laws are being used to disproportionately keep people of color away from the polls.
By running for political office and affecting change on the ground in their communities, in their states. So we now have black women running for governorships, and we have a number of African Americans that we've seen has shaped elections. So I think the idea of enfranchisement is also expanded to not just being able to vote, but exercising political power and exercising political agency. And I think that's the legacy of the suffrage movement.
To me, these are not women who dropped out of the sky. These are women who come out of a political tradition and are building upon that, and will tell you that if you ask them.
These women and the generations that followed worked to make democracy and opportunity real in the lives of all of us.
Back. First, it is a joy and a privilege to have with me today our friend, a great confidant of the East Zion Fair Baptist Church and the Wilmington community, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. It is a joy, Congresswoman.
Always good to see you. Always, look, I don't know whether to call you doctor or reverend. I'm gonna call you Pastor Curry because I believe
that's fine, or you can just call me Chris.
Nope. I'm gonna respect all that work. Like Beyonce says, put some respect on my check. I'm going to respect all of what you have accomplished to be able to be that good shepherd. And we are grateful to you. And I miss seeing all of my brothers and sisters at Easy and Fair. I miss seeing you. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity just to spend some time. And I did bring my cup of coffee because I think it's coffee in the morning.
Curry. There you go. Yes. You did well. And it's just like you to always be on point. Let me just say, starting off, Congresswoman, you are in Washington getting it done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Even though it seems like you're moving a whole lot, but you are always getting it done. Thank you. That's how I want to start off our time today.
Thank you.
When I was watching, and I know that there's several things we're going to talk about, the whole insurrection that occurred, it did my heart really glad. I knew your husband. I knew you. It did my heart glad in the midst of all of the devastation that was going on to see you result to your faith.
Amen.
I remember, I think it was Maya Angelou who said, when a person show you who they are, believe them. Well, during times of stress is when we really get to know who a person is. And you showed us a woman of faith.
To God be the glory. I want to thank everybody for your prayers. I could feel them. I mean, I did not know that in real time people were recording what was happening after, those folks stormed the Capitol. And, all I knew was that that morning, it's funny because that morning, I anointed myself first, not knowing what was coming. Every morning I pray and I listen to gospel music, but that morning in particular, I even thought about John Lewis that morning. And it was a special day because it was the day that Congress was to do something we do every time. We certify the election results from across the country. It's every 4 years. But this was special because it was going to be Joe Biden, Delaware's own. So I volunteered to be up in the gallery, up in that balcony, to witness it, not knowing. And it was first come, first serve. And I just knew I had to be there. And when 15 minutes in, we started getting reports on our phone, like a suspicious package found here in this part of the city, a suspicious package found here. Then we saw people being whisked off the floor of the House, the Speaker of the House, the leader, all the leadership. And then I saw more security around the perimeter. We didn't know what was happening. And then you could start to hear outside of the chambers. And we didn't even know. They just came in and said, get down, get under your chair is a gas mask. And they were trying to bolt the doors. And what happened is people got all of the members off the floor, but forgot we were up in the balcony. Oh, wow. And so we were trapped up there and we crawled around to the other side where the Republicans usually sit. So hoping that, and also because the door was barricaded. And I'll just never forget looking down over the balcony and seeing the door where the shot was fired and the woman was killed. We could hear the gun go off. And then I looked at the other entrance and there were, police holding guns to that door. And all I could think is that I don't have a weapon. I don't have anything except Jesus.
Yeah.
And I will just never forget it because I looked back at one of my colleagues, Val Demings from Florida, and she is a prayer warrior. Like we came in the 115th Congress together. And whenever things get rough, we would pray with each other. We would encourage each other. And I looked around and she grabbed my arm and I grabbed hers and she said, Lisa. And that's how she always say, Lisa. She said, we know who's bigger than this. And that's when I began to pray because, like I said, what I knew is that that's what our ancestors had. Even during slavery, even during Jim Crow, we had the power of prayer. And I saw other people calling family. I was like, My family know I love them. I had text them, pray. And I was like, I'll call them when I get out of here. I just said, that song, Jesus on the Main Line? That's who I called. Tell them what you want. I wanted to get out of there safely. And I prayed for our country. And somebody read my lips and transcribed the prayer. And the first verse that came out of my mind and out of my head and out of my spirit was that all things work together for the good. Yeah. Even in this bad moment. It is shining a light. COVID shined a light on the inequities and the disparities that we face every single day. George Floyd shined a light on the things that we experience in our own communities all across the country and right in Delaware. This insurrection shined a light on the racism and the white supremacy that still exists. Yes. Still exists. Mm-hmm. And that this too, I recalled to my mind. That's when I went into Lamentations. I was like, I have hope because of our mercies, God's mercy. He new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Amen. So if people don't remember anything else I said this morning, God, great is thy faithfulness. Amen. Great is thy faithfulness. This too shall pass. Yeah. And we will be stronger for it because all things work together for the good.
Amen. Now, you done gave us a good sermon. I'll get your offering. Well, you can't take offerings. I can't do
no,
that.
I can't. No, I can't.
Thank you. Thank you. Because even as a pastor, to hear and to sense how God moved and how the word, David said, thy word have I hid in my heart. That's it. You showed it. When time came with pressure, that word came forward. And one of the things I wanted to do, even with this interview, is to talk about Women's History Month. You have shown us that women of faith are the ones who have caused us to survive everything that we've survived.
God is good. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for highlighting Women's History Month. I mean, I think that, we come off of Black History Month and then we go right into Women's History Month. And for me, both of those, a lot of times we think about and say, well, Black History Month is so short and, but we know that, our greatness, our excellence are 24/7, 365 days a year. But the reason why these months are so important is because it allows us to stop and reflect on all of those who came before us and that created this historic moment. I mean, I became the first woman and the first Black person because there was a Shirley Chisholm.
Yes.
Who's the first Black woman Congresswoman, right? And so it causes us to pause, reflect, but it should also be the motivation and the inspiration to do more. Mm-hmm. To say, okay, I'm receiving the baton now, and what am I going to do with it? And so that's what these months are about for me. And so I'm so grateful that you stopped and reflected on the history and knowing that it's the history, it's the foundation that allows me and you and others to actually get the work done now. Amen. All the work that you do in our community. I mean, it is built on a foundation. And Amen. So
I want to make sure I honor the fact that your faith, and I paid close attention to how, even though there are issues still in Congress, the more women that are joining the ranks of Congress, it is really starting to show things are getting done. Yeah. And you've only been there for a short while, and you're doing so much even for the state of Delaware. I got an email about the community project funding thing that you're doing. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yes. So, for the first time in 10 years, Congress is about to embark upon funding opportunities that are coming from the members of Congress, not just the executive branch and the president, but from members of Congress. And so each member will be allotted 10 slots for funding for nonprofits and governmental agencies in our state can submit applications to us, and hopefully we can show on the screen our website so that people can actually reach out to us. We will. But it's 10 projects that really focus on a community need. And so we're going to need people to have data, evidence, letters of support, maybe a strategic plan or like a community planning document that demonstrates a real need that they will apply to our office. And it also has to meet, there are a lot of criteria in terms of what agencies they can apply to. So for example, it might be something that is a health and human services need. It might be something that is an education need. But there are specific lines in the budget that it has to meet. And so we have a person, Kevin Diamond, in our office who is spearheading this for us. But we want you to go to our website and make sure that you take a look and see if you have a project that is based on Delaware needs. You know, it can't just be something you think is a good idea. No, it's got to be based on real needs that we have in our communities. It's going to be very, very competitive. So I want people's expectations to be right. Like, you know, I believe in under promise, over deliver. So get your, you know, it's going to be very competitive, but we want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of Delawareans.
Yes. Well, that's awesome. And, you know, what I've watched is that you have shown the integrity, and you have had the integrity and continue to have it. I'm more of a congratulatory person with you because you've met every box. You've checked every box, and you are really representing the Delawareans with such distinct and honor. And I just want to continue to say thank you. Let me just do a little sad moment. You know what's going on with the shooting. We had 2 within the last 2 weeks. It troubles my spirit, and it's sad that we can't even get gun control in any form, and we're even in a state where it's not too much control of guns. What role do you think women can play in that?
Yeah, what a great question. I mean, first of all, you know, for me, I wear multiple hats when I come to this job. Like, I bring all of me. And so, you know, I bring the hat of your congressperson and the person that represents you in Washington, D.C. And so what our job is legislation, to pass bills, to pass laws that deal with this issue. And I can tell you, in Congress, we just passed 2 important bills. One is H.R. 8, which is regarding background checks. You know, if you can, we make sure that when people need a driver's license, you can't just drive. You know, we make sure that we have safety precautions when you go through an airport. We need background checks. And so we in the House of Representatives just passed a law regarding background checks, but it was spearheaded by a Black woman. Lucy McBath, the Congresswoman from Georgia, whose son, Jordan, actually died because of gun violence. And so to watch her push all of our colleagues and have it not just be a Democratic bill, but it was bipartisan that got the votes. We now need the Senate to do it. We know that President Biden will sign that. Another is from Congressman Jim Clyburn, who is the whip of the House from South Carolina, to close the Charleston loophole. And many of you may remember the shooting, I think it was of 9 individuals at the Emmanuel AME Church in South Carolina, where the guy just walked in to a prayer meeting, you know, prayer Bible study, and shot folks because there was a loophole in the 3 days within which there could be a background check. That we just passed that bill as well. It also needs to go through the Senate. There are other things that I'm working on right here at home. For example, last summer, I began focusing on making sure that every law enforcement officer had body cameras in the state of Delaware. Yeah. The community wants body cameras. Law enforcement wants body cameras. The big issue had been money. And so since then, the city of Wilmington has gotten a grant for body cameras, federal government grant. We are looking at other opportunities. But what is also important is the policies that go along with those body cameras. The questions of when you show them, how do you show them, how are they redacted, things like that. And so that's another thing that we're working on. The last piece I'll mention on kind of pushing this whole issue is there is also a bill called the Break the Cycle. And that is a bill that I'm also co-leading with some of my colleagues to say that the real answers to our problems are at the local level. Communities know what communities need to break the cycle of violence. And so that part of our goal is to get the dollars to the communities so that they can do programs and initiatives that work best for them. And as y'all know, I was Secretary of Labor in Delaware. So to me, jobs and opportunity is a big part of that. That's the one hat I wear as the legislator, as the lawmaker. I'm also a mom of a Black son. And so when I look at the situations that we see right here in Delaware, I carry that piece of me too to the work. It informs the work that I do. And so, you know, as someone, you mentioned knowing my late husband, Charles,
Yes.
you know, any one of us knows that when we lose someone we love, our heart breaks open. And so I also feel for the mothers that are, and family members, but I know there's a special bond between a mom and their child. Yeah. And so I wear that hat as well when I go to work. I take that with me as well to Washington, D.C. And so it motivates me to do the work. And you know, our goal is to make sure that we pass the laws, that we get the money to Delaware to be able to do what we need to do to help break the cycle that we see in our communities.
Now, you don't have to answer this because I always want to make sure I'm friendly, but I want to just throw it out here. Do you think that we need to try to find more women to run for Senate? Because the filibuster is something that they're struggling with. I think we should get rid of it. That's my opinion. But it's up to you how you would like to answer that question. But I just don't understand why you all are doing your jobs. Y'all are passing the laws. But what is going on with the Senate?
Well, let me tell you, I don't think that's a not friendly question. I think that's an excellent question. And I am a big believer that we need to see representation of women in all places. We know that right now, not only are there a small number of women in the US Senate, there are no Black women in the US Senate. I mean, you may know I was on the VP selection committee that helped our president select Kamala Harris as his running mate and now as our vice president. But with her leaving, there are no Black women in the Senate. And so, you know, one of the things that I think, again, back to Women's History Month, that's so important. This week, I actually got to participate in an event with the Coalition of 100 Black Women here in Delaware, and to see the Black women who have stepped up to run for city council, state senate, state representative, school boards, very important place for all of us. And to see leadership even in our state for the vaccine distribution, to see Black women doctors who are getting the word out and who are working with congregations, you know, giving vaccines all over the state. It is important that we raise up and rise up as leaders, women. I totally agree. I think in the whole filibuster, that could be a whole nother show we could talk about on that. Ooh, that's a whole nother show.
And I might have to hold you to that because I'm mesmerized that we can't get anything through the Senate.
Yeah. No, I as a matter of fact, I was just on a text thread with other members of Congress having conversations about the filibuster. And, you know, some people talk about just getting rid of it. Some people talk about updating and modernizing it. What we know is it's not working.
It's not
That's
working.
What we do know. We know that.
And the people voted in the Democratic Party or whatever party they voted in. And that's what you should be making the decisions right now. So I'm gonna leave that there. And
leave that there. You said that, I didn't.
Yeah, I did. Yes, and I firmly believe that. But I want to now talk a little bit about the COVID situation that was going on with the COVID. And I'm so impressed again. Our president, Delawarean Joe Biden, is doing a phenomenal job with getting things out. Any thoughts on the whole COVID situation?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you know, I mentioned this at the top of the interview that, you know, this is an issue that we know is also disproportionately affecting Black and brown people. You know, people that are on the front lines of the work that is being done. And what I am proud of is that we have come together most recently and passed the American Rescue Plan. Mm-hmm. And one of the major parts that I played in that was hearing from Delawareans about the challenges with everything from food insecurity to rental assistance to unemployment to childcare needs to opening our schools back. We focused very heavily on that. And one of the areas like that I specifically worked on was to make sure that those direct payments, that those stimulus checks were included in the packages. And that's in the package in December as well as this one. There were, movements. Initially, there wasn't even talk about it in the December package, but, I actually worked with a Republican and said, we need to come together. You're having problems in West Virginia. We have needs in Delaware as well. And so I just said, let's galvanize the most broad, diverse group of people that we can, and let's all push together to make sure that those stimulus checks were in there. And for my office, the word this term, this year is impact. We want to have the greatest impact, the greatest positive impact on the most people. And with just even that piece of this, 158 million families across this country, and that's 446,000 Delawareans were able to get those stimulus checks. That was important to me. Again, I mentioned housing. I mentioned a whole host of other things that are part of the American Rescue Plan. Even the child tax credit, which will put money in the pockets of families and will lift half of our children out of poverty. I mean, those are transformational things that President Joe Biden, along with the Congress, were able to do. And, my goal is to make sure that we continue to hear from you. A lot of people don't even know that a congressional office can help them with problems like Social Security or Social Security disability or IRS or immigration. They can reach out to our office, and we have individuals that can assist right here for one-on-one things, but then things like the community project funding helps on a larger level. And that's really why we're here. And that's why I am so blessed to be in this job. I started off as a caseworker in 1987, 88 with our now Senator Tom Carper. And I got to see firsthand some of the challenges. And if you go way back, my dad, Ted Blunt, whose birthday was this week, yes, we came to Delaware because he got a job at the People Settlement, and that started us here in 1969 in Delaware. And I'm blessed to be in this position. And so I want to make sure people know we're here to serve. And that's what this is really about. It's about service.
It is. Lisa, I also want to say, Congresswoman Blunt, let me say to you, thank you so much. You have been, and you are, an example of excellence. Your energy, oh my God, I'm thinking you're probably 22 years old.
I love you for that. I'm 50. As my daughter-in-law said, I just turned 55, not 59, but.
But you have the energy, you have the wisdom, you make us Delawareans proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to share as we close out? This will be aired on this coming Sunday, and I want the people to know that you are constantly at work. So anything you would like to share as we close?
I really just want to again say how thankful I am and grateful I am to you for giving me this opportunity to share some of the work that is happening, because I want you to continue to have hope. This is a moment right now where we can feel very down, lost, dejected. And we have lost family members, friends, loved ones to this pandemic. We have lost family, friends, and loved ones to gun violence. And we face the challenges of what we just saw at the insurrection of the Capitol. But this I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. It's because of God's mercies that we're not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. So stay faithful, stay hopeful, stay on the battlefield for justice, peace, and ultimately the big word for me is love. I love you, Pastor Curry. I love all of you who are watching, and let's just stick together.
Yeah, and well, I'll assure you that once you come back home, we're going to give you your license to minister the word because you are already there. And I want to say to those of you who are watching us that Congresswoman Blunt Rochester is certainly from a family of public servants. Her father served the city of Wilmington in such a phenomenal way. City council president, does some phenomenal things even now in his retirement. And I did see his birthday was just a few days ago, given him when we're going to have this played. And we want to wish him a happy birthday. And he still looked good, strong, and we appreciate that. We appreciate you. And yes, I did know your husband. We share the same fraternity, and it was a sad day for all of us when he transitioned. But you know what? You turned that pain into purpose, and we thank God for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Pastor Curry.
God bless you.
Take care, everybody.
And you do the same. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jennifer Daniels. I'm a personal trainer, and I used to personal train First Lady Curry a few years ago. Sister Curry, I'm going to check on you and make sure you're still hitting those squats and lunges and taking care of your physical wellness. I know you are. You were such a great client when we worked together. And so I wanted to bring you guys a little quick workshop talking about your mental and physical health. First Lady Curry reached out to me and asked that I really share some of my background and professional knowledge on this topic of physical and mental health. So for those of you that don't know me and not sure what my background is, as I mentioned before, I'm a certified personal trainer. I'm also a social worker, and right now I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Delaware. Now, I don't have as much time for personal training like I used to, but that doesn't mean that I don't like to come and share some insights on physical health and mental health. And my hopes are to be able to just give you all a few tidbits that you can take away and start thinking about and at least exploring for your own mental and physical wellness. So a few things that I kind of want to just cover today and just jump right in. I want to make this quick and efficient and something that is meaningful and leave you with some takeaways. And again, things that you can start thinking about as you start considering your overall wellness. And so first, I want us all to remember that our mental, physical, and spiritual are all intertwined. Oftentimes, we see people focusing on one or another, or we can have a really strong spiritual relationship with God and we're working on our faith, but we may not be taking care of our bodies, or we may not be tending to our mental health. And I want us to really start thinking about all three of those things working together for our overall well-being and our overall health and happiness. And so not to overlook one or the other, but again, to consider them all and to know that they're very meaningful in us being well. Being the best version of yourself requires attention to your various needs. And again, that's going to be your mental, that's going to be your spiritual, and that's also going to be your physical. So we're going to go through a couple of tips that I want to leave you guys to consider and thinking about as you start charting forward with your own journey and your own health journey and thinking about these different dynamics working together. And so first I want to start with tending to our mental health, okay? Because before we get into the physical, we have to first talk about our mind and how that really is setting the tone to be able to get physical and push ourselves to a limit and focus on our overall well-being. And I think mental health is so important. And I don't want you guys to think about this when I say mental health, like, oh, this means you're crazy or you got something going on. No, this just means holistic health, right? How do I take care of every part of who I am? Mental health is one of those parts of who you are. And so how do we tend to our mental health? The first thing that we should be thinking about as women, as individuals, whomever you are, is practicing self-care for your mental health. And so what does this look like? How can I practice self-care for my mental health? What are things that I can start doing? And the first thing that we can start doing is making sure that we're taking time to be with ourselves, by ourselves sometimes, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's getting your nails done, going to get your hair done, having a moment to read a book to yourself, whatever that is for you, taking time to be with yourself. The next thing that we can do, and something we can often forget and overlook, especially while we're working through a pandemic, we have high levels of racial unrest and different traumas that we may be dealing with from what's happening in society. And so these little things, not doing these little things, can definitely affect our mental health. So not skipping those lunch breaks. For those of you who work at home, which is a lot of us, many of us are still working at home right now, it can be really easy to skip those lunch breaks or those moments where we have time off or a break from work. Make sure you're still keeping to that and keeping attention to that, because that is your you time and how you can fill that cup up of yourself. Next is making sure that you guys are using your sick and personal time. For those of you who are blessed enough to be in a position or have a job where you can call in sick, where you can take a personal day, use those days. It doesn't always have to be our physical body for us to say, you know what, I need to use a sick day. And by law, people cannot ask you why you're taking a sick day. If you're calling in sick and you're not feeling well, it doesn't have to be just physically. Sometimes we just need a mental break. So make sure you guys are still paying attention to that and giving yourselves room for that. The other way that we can practice self-care for your mental health is doing more of the things that you love. Whether you have a particular hobby, whether that's sewing, whether that's cooking, whether that's reading, whatever it is, whether it's traveling. I mean, we can't do as much of that right now since we're in a pandemic, but taking road trips, whatever the case may be, whatever brings you joy, whatever those hobbies that really light you up and make you happy, do more of those things. And so I think the next point here in tending to our mental health is remembering to not ignore the feelings and emotions that arise, whether these are feelings or emotions from past issues or traumas or things that are happening right now in current day. Attempt to address whatever comes up. I think it's so easy for us, especially as Black women, as Black people, to say, I need to focus on my job and making sure the kids are good and making sure everyone else is good. And I don't have time to deal with that thing that bothers me or that trauma or that hurt or that disappointment. And I encourage you all to really step into that. When we have these things that happen in our life, right? They don't go away. They don't go away. We can mask them. We can shove it under the rug for some time, but at some point it's going to be seeping out. So really encouraging you all to not ignore the feelings that you are having. And if you are having those feelings, finding healthy ways to cope with your emotions and your feelings. Of course, as believers of God and in Christ, our spirituality and our faith is what's most important in guiding us through difficult times. And that should always be number one. But we also have to make sure that we are doing some of that work too, in addition to relying on God. So are you exercising? Are you moving? Are you making sure that you're getting outside? Sunlight is so important for us. Vitamin D, there's tons of studies talking about how we can lack or have vitamin D deficiencies as Black people. It's so important for us to make sure just getting sun, how much of a difference that can make in our mental health, even when it's cold out. I don't really like the cold that much myself either, but getting outside, bundling up and getting a little bit of sunlight makes a world of difference in our emotion and our mood. Talking to people we trust are other healthy ways to cope. Journaling, writing, any way that you can possibly release what you are feeling is so important to our mental health and making sure that we're healthy. And then last but not least, I would be remiss not to talk about seeking professional and spiritual guidance when you need it. Sometimes what we can do on our own just isn't enough, and that's okay. That's okay. But being willing, and I know sometimes when we talk about mental health, there can be a lot of stigma around seeking help and reaching out for guidance and support through a professional or a spiritual counselor. But I would challenge you to think about that in a different way. Not that that makes you weak, but in fact, it makes you a very strong person to ask for help when you need it. And so we all have emotions and things going on in our life that impact who we are, especially in the times that we are living in. So it's so important that if it escalates to the level where we're having a difficult time managing, reaching out for help when we need it. The next thing I'll talk to you guys about is really tending to your physical health. And I'll start first with our diet, because what's so important to remember about this, you can exercise 5 hours a day, 7 days a week. But if you have a poor diet, if you are not eating food that sustains your body, exercise is not going to cut it. You're not going to get the health that you're looking for. You're not going to get the look that you're looking for without paying attention to the food that you bring into your body. And by dieting, by diet, I don't mean dieting, okay, which is so important. I actually don't encourage people to go on diets. I encourage people to live a healthier lifestyle. When we diet or when we go on a diet, it can put us in this box where, okay, I'm going to do this for 60 days or 90 days, but then I go back to my old habits. I want you all to start thinking about how can I incorporate this into my life on a regular basis. And a big key to doing that is making sure that we have balance and moderation. I'm not telling you, you can't have another cheeseburger, you can't have another Kit Kat. That's me. I love Kit Kats, okay? Or that you can't have another indulgent treat. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying and what's so important to our physical health is making sure that we balance that out. And so what are some ways that we can start thinking about eating healthier and being better with our diets? And the first tip that I give to all of my clients is really trying to abide by the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, what does that mean? 80% of the time, we are tending to healthy foods. We're ingesting things that are good for us. We're going to pick the salad over the French fries, right? We're going to do baked instead of fried. But then what does the 20 mean? Well, the 20 is where you get to cheat a little. That's when you can have the sweets and the cookies and the sultry or savory foods that you like to have. It's all about balance. We can't live our lives saying that we're never going to eat fatty foods again or we're never going to have sugar. It's just not realistic. But what are ways, again, that we can do this in moderation is how we should be thinking. Really trying to avoid pre-cooked and frozen meals as much as possible. So those lean cuisines, those microwave dinners that really look like they're low in calorie, you're like, oh, this is great. It's an entire dinner and it's only 350 calories. Look on the back of those packages and see how high the sodium count is. Sometimes those little dinners can be 25%, sometimes close to 50% of all the salt that we should have in a day. Now, what does an increase in sodium do in our body? It's going to make us retain more water, and it'll be difficult for us to lose weight if that's what you're trying to do. So really trying to limit the frozen meals, even though they can pull us in because they seem like they're a healthy option. When we look at what's being included in those products, they're not as healthy when we start breaking it down. And so a great way to kind of avoid this is try to cook as often as you can. You know what you're putting in your food. You know how much oil you're using. You know how much butter you're using. You know how much cheese you're using, right? And all of that is important in keeping track of your physical health and your diet. Healthy doesn't have to mean boring, right? So I encourage you all to look on different Instagram pages. Look at skinnytaste.com, for example, is a website that you can use to find healthy meals that are delicious, not boring, and not just eating salads every day, right? Because no one can eat a salad every day. I can anyway, so I'll speak for myself. So thinking outside the box and really trying to add flavor into your healthy eating. And then this last tip is, which is my favorite, is trying not to drink your calories, right? And so what does that mean? Instead of going for the soda and the sugary drinks and the Arnold Palmer and the lemonade, right? Go for the water, right? I would rather eat calories than waste the calories on sugary drinks, unless it's a part of your 80-20 rule. If it's a part of your 20 and you feel like having that soda, or you feel like having that fruit punch, or whatever it is that you want to drink that's not water, that's balanced too. But for the most part, a great way for us to cut calories in our diet is to start going to flavored water, put a lemon in your water, or just seltzer water. There's a lot of great seltzer waters out there that are gonna be great for you and don't give you that extra calorie count. And so then the next piece that I would like to talk to you all about in tending to your physical health, and this is the last piece of what I'll leave you with, not to take this and belabor it too long, but your physical fitness, physical activity maintains our internal and external wellness. Now, a lot of us will get into exercise for vanity reasons because of how we want to look, but I'm challenging you to think even broader than that, outside of that. So many diseases that happen within our body are correlated with a poor diet and being overweight or not being active. Different types of heart failure, diabetes, high blood pressure, right? High sugar, all of that comes back to physical fitness and taking care of your body, right? And so it's about the internal and the external, and we need that physical activity to maintain that. A great piece of advice that I have for you all is to just start from where you are and get moving. I'm not telling you need to go run a marathon, go join CrossFit and go 7 times a week. You need to exercise for 2 hours a day. Absolutely not. All I'm saying is that what's important for us is to get moving. And so right now, walking counts as movement. And I definitely would like to highlight the walking, especially for those of us that are working at home. We're probably more sedentary than we've ever been in this last year. So taking those moments to get up for a 10-minute walk outside during your breaks, right? Just get moving. That all counts toward your physical activity. Other creative ways that we can get moving, playing with our kids. We know like they have so much energy and they're running and they're jumping and they love to play, and us getting involved with them doing that is a way for us to start moving. Other little tips that we can do to get moving is parking your car a little further from the door. So if you're going to the mall or to the grocery store or wherever you're going to run your errands, instead of trying to park your car close to the front, park a little further back so you can get those extra steps in so that you can get moving. Choose to take the stairs instead of the elevator. Small ways for you to keep yourself together and keep yourself physically active and moving. Other things that are also great is finding an accountability partner or a friend that will go about this journey with you. Either someone that'll do it with you or someone that will check in on you and say, hey, Jennifer, did you go on your workout today? Or Jennifer, do you want to meet on Friday so we can go for a walk? Or every 2 days we meet before work and we walk Glassville Park. Something as small as that is a way for us to stay connected to our fitness. And so I want to go ahead and move into some physical activity goals that we should all be aiming toward as we go on this physical and mental health journey. Really pushing to get at least 30 minutes of consistent movement 4 to 5 times a week. This is so important for us, and again, so important for our health. And there are tons of studies that show how just meeting that 30 minutes a day of movement makes a huge difference in your overall health. Another thing that we should be aiming to do is strength and body training, 1 to 3 times per week. Okay, and that is using some dumbbells, whether you go to the gym, whether you're doing body squats or trying to do push-ups, planks, you name it, all of that is strength training. And we should be trying to do that 1 to 3 times per week. And then lastly is the daily stretching. Okay, and this is something that I have to really stay big on myself, and I encourage everyone else to start thinking about it. Oftentimes in our body, stretching is not only good for preventing injuries when we're working out, it's good for releasing tension and stress. Oftentimes for women, we can carry our stress in our hips and in our lower back. For men, it can be in their chest and shoulders and neck. And so stretching really is a great way to release tension and stress, as well as protect yourself from injury. And so a question that you may have may be, what if I can't afford a trainer? Or where do I even start? I don't even know what to do. And there are there's so much information right at the tip of your fingertips. And one of the examples of this is that most gyms like the Planet Fitness or the YMCA, which many of you have memberships for those particular gyms, they have free online workouts and videos on their apps and online on their website. So making sure you're utilizing those services to figure out where you can get started. Another great tip here is trying social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Put in that search engine, beginner's workout, no weights, or beginner workout with 5-pound dumbbells. Whatever the case may be, you can find this information, tutorials, and fitness guidance right at the tip of your hand, right in our phone that we have all of the time, and it's a great way to get us going. And so I hope that this was useful for all of you. I know it was quick, kind of fast, and I wanted to just give you the nuggets before we parted ways. I encourage you all to take great care of yourself. Remember, your mental, your physical, and your spiritual relationships with yourself and with God are so important to your overall well-being. So good luck and get moving.
I hope and trust that you enjoyed the show today, because it was very important to us that we continue in this light of Women's History Month. Lisa Blunt Rochester, our Congresswoman, is just an amazing, phenomenal individual. She represents us well. Delawareans, I hope and trust that you will always support her. Some of the answers she gave was straight from the heart. You can tell she's not a politician. She's a public servant. And I'm very grateful for that, because anybody who really know God really have a heart for people. She gave us some information regarding her community funding program, and I hope and trust that you would either call the church or even look on your screen and see the website upon which you can go ahead and try to submit those proposals for those of you who are looking for some funding from the government. She talked about the insurrection when they were all calling their families, telling them, hey, I want you to know that I love you and things of that nature. But she decided, no, I'm going to tell my family, pray, because at the end of the day, prayer changes things. We talked about so many different things. It was a great opportunity to hear from her, and I'm grateful for it. And I hope and trust that you all have gotten something from it and that you all are feeling good about it. But the only piece that was really shocking to me, because I kind of said to her, I don't want to be hostile, but I just wanted to see where she was with the filibuster. And I didn't know whether she was going to answer, but she answered straight out. At the end of the day, if our fellow Delawarean Joe Biden is going to get something done, we may have to get rid of that filibuster so that we will be able to carry the agenda. You hear Republicans say all the time, for those who are watching the show today, that elections have consequences. So we elected a Democratic president, a Democratic Congress, a Democratic Senate. And since we've elected it, it should be the one who is providing the leadership in what we should do. I do believe that we should engage each other, and we should get ideas, and we should support each other. But if it is just an outright rejection of everything that is happening without really considering the people who are involved, like those who are disenfranchised, those who are of color backgrounds, then the reality of it is this: go forward. 51 votes will do it, because that's what the country decided they wanted to be in the White House, the Senate, and in the Congress. So when she responded to that, that really helped my heart to know that we are all on the same page. We want to see better. So what a great show. What a great opportunity. You had the opportunity to see some other things in the show, and I hope and trust that you enjoyed the whole show. Don't forget, for those of you who are following us, make sure you're following us on Facebook. Make sure you're following us on Instagram and on YouTube. Whenever you can, like us and continue to push forward. The more we hear from you, the more we see you, the more we are going to push forward to provide you with the quality broadcasting that you rightfully deserve. We love you with the love of the Lord. And I say to you, until the next time we get together, have a cup of coffee on me.